So, fair warning to everyone, I'm about to plagiarize myself. If you noticed in the bulletin, I wrote a Devar Torah, that's a commentary on the weekly Torah portion for the Washington Jewish Week. And it's about memories and their power. And I'm going to share a little bit more about that with you now. So, the Torah portion that was read yesterday in Shabbat services is the part in Exodus that includes the last three plagues in Egypt, the first Passover sacrifice, and the commandment to remember and to teach about the Exodus yearly unto eternity. I opened that Devar by quoting from Lois Lowry's The Giver. The worst part of holding the memories is not the pain, it's the loneliness of it. Memories need to be shared. Memories need to be shared. We talk of treasured memories and painful memories, of happy ones and of sad ones. And it is in the sharing of them that we find love, support, and community. It is in the sharing of them that history becomes more than a list of dates and places, but a living thing to be nurtured and passed along. The verse from the Torah that we just heard beautifully read commands the Israelites to remember the Exodus from Egypt for all time. The liberation had not yet happened when this commandment is given. And we're already told to honor it yearly. It's in the books. So that yearly celebration has continued unto this day as we celebrate our Seders. And we begin that with the words, "We were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt." During the Seder, we are asked to put ourselves in the place of the fleeing slaves, to remember the pain of bondage, the awe at the miracles, and the fear of both past and future. We use the salt waters for tears, the bitter herbs for pain, the charoset for bricks. The Seder is a multi-sensory extravaganza of memory. We are also asked to remember that the freedom came at an exorbitant price. Countless Egyptians, farmers, fishermen, tradesmen, suffered because of the plagues. Lives and livelihoods were lost. At the Seder, we don't ignore that. We pause and shed drops of wine on our plates, for at that moment, we are not joyous or exultant. Those communal experiences bring those ancient memories close and vivid. We collapse the then into now. We see the past in its full complexity. We gain perspective and grow in our humanity. As I wrote in my Devar, memory without context is meaningless, and memory without community loses depth. Tuesday marks the 81st anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz, a day that has been denoted as International Holocaust Remembrance Day. This day, too, is marked around the world, and in many places, by the telling of stories, of memories. Those who lived through those times are now few, and their children and grandchildren have taken up the mantle of sharing the memories, and that is a good thing. But I am worried. A few days ago, I was talking to a local middle school student about Holocaust Remembrance Day and how their school was honoring it. They'd already had an assembly where 3 Holocaust stories were shared. The student was able to tell me about the person who survived one of the camps, of a failed uprising that restored humanity and dignity, if not freedom, of a set of siblings who survived in hiding. But when I asked, where did these stories happen? When did they happen? And why do you think you were told them? They really couldn't say. The school had provided no context other than the Holocaust was terrible and it all happened in Europe, and they should remember that. Is that enough context? Of course we should remember that. But without knowing why these things happened, who perpetrated them, the differences between all the people involved, are we really giving this generation the opportunity to grow in empathy and compassion? The Holocaust is very easy to paint in stark contrasts. But if we do that, we lose the ability to apply those lessons, those memories, to the future. Unlike the Seder, which transports us into the story, Memory without context leaves us as mere spectators. It's only with context that we learn to identify our own weaknesses and our own dreams, both of which we need in order to see one another as fellow human beings, as fellow travelers on this road of life. We must remember that stories do not exist in a vacuum. They are carried by souls. And the passage we just read from the book of Hebrews offers us a blueprint for this kind of active contextual memory. When we teach the next generation, it is not enough to ask them to remember the event. We must ask them to consider the outcome of the lives of those who stood firm. We must give them a context to see not just the victimhood, but the faith spoken through acts of courage, the dignity maintained in the face of dehumanization, and the hope that persisted when the world went dark. By rooting these stories in the why and the where, we stop being lonely keepers of a painful past. Instead, we become a community that walks in the steps of those who came before, transforming memory from a stagnant history lesson into a living, breathing guide for how we treat our neighbors today. Thank you and good morning.